Joining us now, Alfredo Ortiz. He's Chairman, CEO, President, Chief Bottle Washer, and all that good stuff for the Job Creators Network. And I tell you what, Alfredo, a couple things I want to start off by saying. Number one, welcome and happy Thanksgiving. Hope you had a great one.
Thank you, John. I did. It was fantastic. I appreciate it. Hope you did as well.
It was great. We had a good time, and we appreciate all you guys have done at Job Creators Network. Now, before we get into interest rates, I've been telling people, so many people I talk to, Alfredo, don't understand the tax cut that was passed if you own a small business. And they're not going to understand it until April 15th when they start filing their taxes. Because the benefit of the tax cut, we haven't even seen it because you don't really get the benefit until April when you're filing your taxes for 2018 in 2019. And one of the biggest amazing things about this tax cut for any small business owner, Alfredo, is what they call the 20% pass-through credit, which means that if you own a small business, and so many people do today, because that's the engine, as you know, Alfredo, of driving the economy, right. No matter what, when you have your business and you have all your revenue and all your expenses, and then you have a profit, whatever it is, hopefully you have a profit. Doesn't matter if it's $1 or $100,000, you have a profit, and then you take that profit as a small business LLC and you transfer it over to, that's the income that goes on your personal return. Well, regardless of everything else, all the other benefits of the tax cut, 20% drops off just because you own the business. So if you made 100, you're only transferring 80. If you made 50, you're only transferring 40. So you're immediately saving that 20%. I don't know how many people I've talked to that have no idea how that works, Alfredo.
Yeah, John, and again, thank you very much for having me on the show. And that's absolutely right. I mean, that's one of the reasons we were on the road, as you know, last year on our Tax Cuts Work road show, basically. We almost traveled 40,000 miles in 2 buses, crisscrossing the country from coast to coast, corner to corner, trying to get this message out. Because unfortunately, you know, this is one area that, you know, it's great that the Republicans got the tax cut passed, but I don't think did the great job of communicating clearly in ways that people understand the benefits of it. And even small business owners who obviously are close to their businesses and, you know, work with their accountants and stuff like that. It wasn't the easiest thing to communicate necessarily, but the benefit is so huge. John, I think you yourself may have benefited from the 20% deduction, being able to invest back in another business of yours. And others across the country that I talk to, every single place I go to, you know, they actually are taking advantage of that. But there's a lot of small business owners that just don't understand that. And then on the personal side, you know, this was one of our main concerns, was that, you know, the benefit, as you pointed out correctly, isn't going to be really seen until April, when you're able to take advantage of all of the deductions that are there on the personal exemptions, et cetera. And that was one of the reasons, actually, Newt Gingrich and I we were really pushing for that to be retroactive to the beginning of last year, so that they could actually feel the benefit of the filings, this past year. But, you know, it didn't happen that way, but people are going to start seeing in April. So that's why I think, you know, we're just still at the beginning stages, I think, of this great economy and the rebound. And again, you know, that's one of the reasons, though, we don't want to also put our foot on the brake. And I know we're going to talk about the interest rates of the Fed. But right now, small business optimism is sky high. Consumer optimism is sky high. And then if you look at unemployment, for example, unemployment is at record lows, not only across the board, but when you look at all the demographic groups, Asian Americans, Latinos, Hispanics, blacks, people without, with no more than a high school degree. I mean, some of these unemployment rates and wage increases are at the highest levels in terms of wage increases and lowest levels in terms of unemployment. And in fact, if you're looking for a job, you can find a job, because there are a million more jobs available than there are people to fill them.
Well, look, I think that is the main thing here. And I agreed with your pushing last year for the tax cuts to be retroactive, because when do you think, Alfredo Ortiz, when is the Democrats' big lie going to be exposed? And of course, the big lie is the tax cut of 2018 was only for corporations, was only for the super wealthy, didn't affect the middle class, didn't affect anybody else. It was a one-way street. When is that going to come out and be exposed?
You know what, John? I wish I could say that it is going to be exposed, but I'm not sure if it really ever will truly be, because here's what's going to happen. Now that they're in control, most of the news cycle is going to be about some kind of impeachment hearing or some kind of hearing of some sort, right? And then the other thing they're going to start focusing on is Bernie care, this Medicare for all. And so I think they're just going to blow right past the actual positive impact that the tax cut had, from basically will be 2 years old at that point. And I think that's just going to be a real shame. And then the other thing is, as you know, unlike yourself and other news groups, that are out there and Fox News, this message of positive economic recovery is just not being, spoken by any of the other news media outlets really in any real way, shape, or form. And so when you add that, to all the other negative messaging that the Democrats are doing, especially now that they have the bully pulpit of the House and Nancy Pelosi, I just don't think we're really going to hear it as much. And in fact, all we're going to hear about is, repeal and replace on the tax cut.
It's going to be a repeal and replace. But like there was an article the other day, I think it was in The Hill, that said the Democrats are poised to repeal the corporate tax cut and that corporations were bracing for that, which I thought was a false headline, because you would have to get the U.S. Senate to approve it. They've got a 53-47 majority. That's not going to happen. And then the president would have to sign the appeal. So, I mean, you can't get a repeal with just one branch of government. So why would that headline even be written?
Again, it's when
Am
you
I
look
right?
at most of the media outlets, right, John, that are in control of this messaging. They want to make sure that message gets out, that they're pushing for that they're pushing for, the people, so to speak. And that these corporations got, all the breaks, 83%, which again is just the biggest bunch of junk. I'm trying to find the right word. I guess that was the best word I could find for radio. That's out there. I mean, because it's just not the truth. I mean, the biggest reason that had to happen is because we had these ridiculous rules that had taken place, when we were trying to pass the tax cut. In which they had to, limit the size to that, the 1.5, trillion basically number. And so they had to make these, tax cuts end in a certain amount of time frame. But look, I mean, the House had already passed an extension, to make these permanent, both on the for small business and for personal. And so, there's a real push for that. I mean, I think what I'd like to be able to do is really kind of, call the Democrats on this and actually make them vote on that bill again that really says, we want to extend these on a permanent basis, because that's the right thing to do for our small business owners, and for individuals. And that's something the Republicans had already passed, and it's moving its way to the Senate. So we're in lame duck. We'll see what happens with that. But my understanding is not even small fixes to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act is even being considered now is going to be considered by the House going forward. And maybe not even the lame duck session. So, it's unfortunate. What I hate to see, which I'm a little concerned is going to happen over the next 2 years, John, is just gridlock. And nothing's going to happen again. And all they're going to try to do is block the president's agenda.
This is the Democrats' big lie. They keep telling you over and over it's for corporations. It's not for the little guy. It's only for the wealthy. It only benefits Goldman Sachs. These are lies. And they're going to be exposed in April when people start filing their taxes and realize they're getting a huge savings, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. That's when the economy is even going to spur further. Now, Alfredo, from the standpoint of the Job Creators Network, let's go to Jerome Powell, who is the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And Powell's reasoning goes like this. Look, during Obama, we had 1% or under 1% growth. We were coming out of a recession. So the Fed chairman at the time, Janet Yellen, did the right thing by quantitative easing and artificially holding down the interest rates, because in her view, a rise in interest rates would further put the U.S. into long-term recession. So she artificially squashed them down. Then Powell comes in and he says, okay, I'm going to end quantitative easing. We're growing the economy at 3, 4, maybe 5%. We had 2 growth quarters of 4% and over. I eventually now have to raise interest rates back to equilibrium. And I've got the luxury to do that now because of the booming Trump economy and the increase in gross domestic product, GDP. Now, that seems to outside people as a reasonable way to go about it, even though there's going to be some short-term pain in economic growth. What say you?
Yeah, again, John, we're concerned about that path the Fed did. We go back to the route that we've been seeing on the market. We can trace that back almost to the day, October 3rd, when Powell announced not only the rest of the increases for the rest of the year, but then took an unprecedented action of talking about increases for the following year and maybe even into 2020. I mean, we've never seen a Fed chair do that, and I really think that had a massive impact on the market. But one of the things, and I just talked about this, on Friday actually on Fox, which is it's a double whammy what's happening because the Fed actually is doing two different actions at the same time to slow down the economy because he thinks it's going to get overheated. One is raising the Fed funds rate, which is really, that short-term interest rate, which affects every single consumer. If you've got a car loan, a house loan, a credit card, these rates get impacted by that rate. But at the same time, to your point, he's unwinding the bond portfolio, the QE1, the quantitative easing 1, 2, and 3 that happened under Yellen, which is almost like a $4 trillion balance sheet. Mm-hmm. Now, it's the right thing to be doing, but it's the wrong thing to be doing, we believe, both at the same time. The analog that we've been using, which I think is a good one, which is it's kind of like pumping the brakes on your car while pulling the parking brake at the same time. All it's going to do is going to create donuts right in the parking lot. And, that's the last thing we want to do is create spiraling downward economy, because I think the economy is still on that upward slope, but not in an inflationary way. And people are talking about the wage increases and how we're starting to see we think that's a good thing. Wage increases, we believe, are good. It's playing somewhat of a catch up over the Obama administration because of the anemic 1.5% economic growth, which was all he was able to achieve.
Right.
We really didn't see any wage increases over that same time period. And in fact, there was almost a couple of quarters where we saw deflation happening. And so if anything, we're kind of doing a little bit of catch up for our hardworking, Americans out there who are also our consumers. And we're giving them, I think, the raises and the increases that they need, and the tax cut for small business owners, for example, that have 2/3 of new job growth, right, is in their hands. They've been able to pass these tax cut benefits onto their employees. So we actually think we should just let the economy, the market, kind of solve for itself for a little bit. Let's see what happens with the pullback basically, and the unwinding of the portfolio and the interest rates the interest rate hikes that he's already taken. Let's see the impact. We are seeing obviously some negative or slowdown on global growth out there, and so we're saying let's just hold. Let's not do the December increase, and let's see what happens going into the next quarter of next year.
Alfredo, so what you're saying is end quantitative easing. That makes sense. Absolutely have to do that. That can't go on forever. That creates too much risk. So we're in agreement there. But what you're saying is don't do both at the same time. So too many interest rates increases too soon. But you do agree with me that they have been held artificially down. So if you believe in market equilibrium, they have to come up a little bit, right? But you just want to wait.
Yeah, absolutely, John. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we had to do it. The problem was that actually Yellen didn't do that earlier, right? She didn't do it 2 years ago. That's when we really should have started doing this. But she didn't want to impact Obama's economy, right? So she kept it at 0%. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think we went wrong from that perspective. What the chairman is doing on paper makes sense, right? But in reality, again, when you look at the two different impacts happening at the same time, that's where we're saying we're going to have to ease into that. And unfortunately, again, it didn't start happening a couple of years ago when it should have under Obama. And again, we're starting to see this wonderful growth in the economy as we speak. Let's go ahead and continue that. Again, inflationary forces, we don't see these massive inflationary forces that require this double impact of the unwinding of the bond portfolio and the increases in the rate.
All right, so you basically want to pace it and slow it down, not to jeopardize the economic growth that we're having, so that we maintain the 4.5% GDP. And then you think maybe let's fix the quantitative easing that I believe, again, Janet Yellen did the exact right thing to do if you study economics because of the anemic Obama economy. She had no choice. But what you want to do is pace this out, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right, John. Let's pace it out a little bit. Let's see what's happened already, with the rates that have already happened. And again, we've got global slowdown on the other side. That also is impacting and will impact some of our GDP growth. So we're just saying, let's take a little bit of a pause. Don't do the rate increase in December.
Okay, no rate increase in December. Let's take a pause, keep the economy growing. What a great economic discussion we had. Now, Alfredo Ortiz, tell me, now that the midterms are over, Job Creators Network, what are you guys going to be doing?
John, we got to keep getting this message out. We just did a poll, and again, 40-some-odd% of the people surveyed didn't even know that there was a tax cut that happened last year. I mean, this is how I think unfortunate was the communication that the Republicans had on the tax cut. Part of it is that we have to understand how to communicate that, John. And you saw that when we were on the road together. It's not just good enough to say we got a tax cut passed.
No, it's not.
You have to really talk about the impact, the positive impact in hearing small business owners in particular, how they use, these tax cuts, how they were able to really invest back in their business, whether it was through hiring more people, increasing wages or equipment, right, and taking advantage of that 20%, pass-through piece. And also the immediate, one thing we didn't talk about is the immediate expensing of these equipment purchases.
That's right.
Huge
the
amount
immediate
of small business
expensing.
owners have taken advantage of that.
The immediate expensing.
Keep communicating the benefits of that.
Right. Because of that, people are making investment. They're buying capital equipment, which spurs other things. We need to talk about this. We need to get like a small business owner on a week talking about the benefits of this tax cut. I'm out of time. Alfredo Ortiz. Go to taxcutswork.com.